Let's get to you first about what has just happened in the Parliament. So it's been hard to keep an eye on the past 24 hours, whether this was being shoved through with no amendments, whether there would be some amendments. The Premier comes out and says, well, everyone can do whatever they want, and the process seems to have slowed down and may well have a final resolution in September. That said, the expectation is that the majority of the upper house will do exactly what the lower house did. Are you any more confident tonight than you were last week or the week before that the upper house will do what the Premier voted against, yet said she wanted to do, which is to ban abortions based off gender selection?
Well, Paul, right through this process, the fix has been in. You see, a cross-party cabal of lefties have been meeting in this building in secret, and their original plan was to jam it through the lower house in 1 week and then the upper house the following week. So they thought this could go through in a fortnight. And the problem with the Premier here is she leads from behind. The Berejiklian style is to lead from behind, push others forward. In this case, the Green left inner city member for Sydney, Alex Greenwich, who's moved the bill in the lower house, and you've got this cabal of lefties doing the work elsewhere. So the process has been dreadful. You know, this is how to mishandle a Bill 101. And just to give you an example, today they've announced there'll be no discussion of amendments until the 17th of September. 2 weeks ago in the upper house they were saying, oh, we need just a 5-day inquiry. It turns out the inquiry could have been 6 weeks. And the inquiry they had last week had 14,000 submissions. It crashed the Parliamentary website. And in the rush to set the inquiry up and call witnesses, nobody thought, it's quite remarkable, nobody thought to call anyone from the Health Department to give evidence. Not the Health Minister, not the Chief Obstetrician, nobody who had administrative carriage of this very sensitive, passionate, divisive legislation. So you could not get a bigger farce. You could not more comprehensively turn a parliament into a standing joke, totally disrespectful of the people of New South Wales, than what the Berejiklian and Greenwich government has done.
So what do you think of what the Premier has said, where, as you say, about this example of leading from behind? And look, again, rather than trying to interpret and reinterpret and double-check what's said sort of one day to the other, sit here and let's have a chat about it on the show in the next little while. But I think the media strategy is head down, bust it through, and hopefully nobody will talk about it. But if it's going to be shoved off till September, it's the only thing she's going to be asked about, no matter how many ribbons are going to be cut. She said last week that she hoped that the upper house would be able to make the changes to the bill, like making gender selection illegal. She said gender selection was wrong. Yet she didn't vote that way when it happened in the lower house. So which one is her real position, do you think?
Well, the genie's out of the bottle and she can't control it. That's the problem. She started with a bill. The fundamental problem she has is she started with a bill that had the Labor left and the Greens cheering, and her own Conservative base and her own voters asking, well, who did we vote for? We never expected this. You know, you vote Liberal, you get Green. So if you start with a bill that's got the Greens cheering, you've got major problems on your hands. And these people are so arrogant, this cross-party cabal is so determined to get it through on their terms. The Premier, to some extent, is whistling in the breeze, saying what we all believe. It's just unacceptable to have gender selection abortions in New South Wales. They should be outlawed. But because of the conscience vote, because it's gone to the upper house, because the cabal is bigger than this Premier who leads from behind, she's lost control of the process. Well, the other one too, and sorry, Rita and Troy, I'll get to everyone here, but I just want to deal with what is literally happening as we speak in the upper house, debating this now in New South Wales, is that she came up with what I thought, if she had said at the start of the process, I would have been way more supportive about it, which was that we have to decriminalise abortion so then we can move on to Zoe's Law, where essentially somebody will be held criminally responsible if their criminal acts end up killing a baby inside a woman, you know, like what happened to Brodie Donegan. Now, she doesn't like, and rightly so, this to come from anyone but the government. She doesn't want it to be Fred Nile or any other one. She wants it to be a government bill. Now, Gladys Berejiklian, after, again, the first votes had happened, this all happened in the lower house, then she started to talk about Zoe's Law. Now, this is why I'm sort of holding my fire a bit here, Mark. It's not because I don't think what's happening as a process is outrageous here. I want Zoe's Law to happen. I want somebody to be held criminally responsible if they bash up a woman and end up killing the baby. But if that should have been said at the start of the process, not after. It had already, as you said, Jenny was out of the bottle. Yeah, because the process is so badly rushed, it's policy on the run. We haven't seen the government's bill on Zoe's Law, which I'd be supporting. But what we have seen is a faulty abortion bill that has the problem with gender selection abortions. It has the problem with medical mistake abortions, where the baby is born alive, and the barbaric practice where people can allow it to perish on the hospital table or trolley. You've got the conscientious objections of doctors and nurses being wiped, and the big concern, you know, Rita's made the valuable point here that public opinion would say first trimester, woman's choice, late-term abortions only in a case of medical emergency. And the safeguards in that regard are paper thin. So, you know, there's 4 or 5 big problems with this bill. The Premier's lost control of it. And quite frankly, when you entrust legislation out of your hands as the Liberal Premier of New South Wales into the hands of a Green Left Independent, the Labor Left and the Greens Party, well, it's no surprise that you've absolutely got a mess on your hands.
Well, and remember, Troy and Rita, why there's such credibility in what Mark says about how when the Greens are cheering, it's something you shouldn't be involved with. It wasn't just the Greens that were cheering. Watch on the far left of screen, when this thing passes the lower house, with all of the problems that have been identified, as Mark and everyone else knows about this bill, the Alternative Premier, along with all of the lefties, are cheering when this thing passed the lower house. Not just the basic decriminalisation, but all of the gender selection, all of the issues Mark just told you about. Remember, this was the reaction at a moment of life and death being passed through Parliament.
The result of the division is 59 ayes, 31 noes. I declare the motion passed and the bill passed.
Rita, first to her feet, the opposition leader cheering and carrying on because they all want that Penny Wong-like moment where we've stepped into the 21st century and let's cheer it all along at the same time. Idiot stuff.
It is idiot stuff, and I've got to say, I don't know how they're going to avoid gender selection abortion, even if you have some amendment in the bill that says that's banned. How are you going to stop people still going down that path? They know if they know it's banned, they will just say something else. As soon as they find out the sex, if it's not the gender they want, they will say, I can't proceed with this pregnancy for emotional reasons or for financial reasons, whatever the reasons are for wanting the termination. So there's also that to consider, that there is a lot of symbolism here with, one, the bill being in existence in the first place, and then having amendments that are actually enforceable and going to give you what you want. That's why I think the late-term abortion issue is the more critical one, and the one that you can actually have some legislation that says unless the mother's health is in jeopardy, her life is in jeopardy, then after a certain point in the pregnancy, termination is no longer an option. And that YouGov Galaxy poll that came out yesterday was commissioned by the Australian Christian Lobby, but a major polling company had carried it out. Again, it showed majority of people in New South Wales are against late-term abortions. Even the people like me who are pro-choice are against late-term abortions. So I would like to see a little bit more focus on that. This sex selection thing, overwhelming majority are against it. That poll said 80%, more than 80%. But I just don't know how you're going to enforce it.
Oh, what a surprise. The Australian Christian Lobby poll didn't get a run, but plenty of others from lefty groups, they get a run all over the media. Again, Troy, I know that there are a lot of people who watch this who find these conversations at times uncomfortable, but I'm sorry, they've got to be had. They've got to be had right now because, and I offer it because the types of people who are concerned about this are the types of people who watch this show. I want the Premier to come here and let's have a chat about it, OK? I'm not going to sit here, carry on, be a prosecutor. I just want to know what's going on from where she stands here because, I mean, what she said today was, in fact, let's run this again, where she says, I'm just one of 93 MPs. That's not true. You're the Premier. You're in the position to decide, effectively, what gets to get into first gear, second gear, and a bill becomes a law. Here's what she said.
We are in a democracy. People are able to express their views, and that's exactly what I expect people to do. We're not all here just to be a rubber stamp. We're here to make a difference. We're here for people to express their views, and I'm one of those members. I'm one of 93 members, but in the lower house, and now the upper house will look at the issue this week, and it's completely up to them as to how they deal with the issue.
So, again, Troy, the process is what matters here, but it's not just the process, it is actually the outcomes. And we're now at the outcome stage. She votes one way in the lower house, doesn't speak to the bill, then says she's just one of 93, votes against the specific stuff on gender selection, yet turns around and says, I hope the upper house does something. The upper house gets an inquiry shoved down their throat for 1 week, then they pump the brakes and it could have gone for 6 weeks. Pretty obvious here, you can't ride both sides of this issue.
Yeah, look, I think this is probably one of the worst examples of lawmaking and public policy making I can think of, actually, in a long, long time of following politics pretty closely in this country. And I start from the principle that I am pro-choice, although I do recognise there's a whole range of complexities that Mark Latham has identified in the bill, and those things should be properly ventilated and examined, particularly in the upper house. But so the problem here is that we just had an election a few months ago, and this was not on the table, and the government gets re-elected, and then suddenly there's the support given for a private member's bill to be presented to the Parliament, and then the Health Minister himself gets involved in drafting that bill process. And this is a very complex, emotionally charged issue in this country, not only in New South Wales, but around the country. And a lot of people have deeply held views, and this debate, therefore, needs to be run properly and run respectively. But the Premier, who has backed it at a press conference, didn't even bother to speak in the debate. And now this bill has been delayed from having a vote in the upper house. So this has been just a complete mess from go to woe. It's opened up possible divisions over leadership in the government and broader questions about strategy and policy and process. So this is just a complete mess. It's unbelievable to think that Gladys Berejiklian won a remarkable third-term victory just months ago, and now they're in this huge mess, and I don't know how the government can successfully resolve this issue. We don't know what the bill's fate will be in the upper house.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that should have been an absolute priority for the New South Wales government coming out of this election was the Murray-Darling plan and water. They lost 2 seats. The National Party lost basically the west of New South Wales. They are now in a position where the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party were able to turn, what was it, 13-vote win in the seat of Orange into a thumping majority. If they don't deal with water, which is what those people demand, that's the stuff that should be the front and centre urgencies, first year, first 6 months. This is instead none of it's happening. Now, Mark, you spoke to the bill. We're trying to turn around some of your comments from the Parliament, but give us a taste of what you had to say in the Parliament tonight.
Well, I was heavily critical of the process because it's all wrong. And I'm a great believer that good lawmaking relies on good process. And, you know, the tragedy of this, really, it's not just that the upper house has wiped its proper functions as a house of review. We could have had a 6-week committee and instead we got one for 5 minutes. The proponents of the bill, who I'm sure are very passionate in what they believe in, because they met in secret, because they didn't consult, because they didn't invite comment from the public, because they didn't involve the full range of experts, they've denied themselves 2 very important qualities on a sensitive, divisive issue like this, and that's credibility and legitimacy. You know, these people look sneaky. These people look like they're dictatorial. They just want to ram it through because they've got none of the argument but some of the numbers. And the Premier has facilitated this bad process. You see, lots of us here have got private members' bill, but this bloke Greenwich gets the rails run. Correct. Where he's got scores of hours of debate allocated in the lower house and now in the upper house. And it's phenomenal for a bloke who got 18,000 votes in 1 seat to be commanding the parliamentary agenda. So it's all wrong, and it's hard to think about anything in this area that's gone right. And if your process is sneaky, clandestine and dictatorial, you're not willing to lay the bill on the table and let people talk about it, inevitably they've been found short. I pay tribute to the member for Mulgoa, Tanya Davies, who caught them short on this question of gender selection abortion. They had no answer for that and they're still fumbling around. So it's been a schmozzle from day one.